Hello guys, you are seeing Prime News Australia, where we show you the latest and important news of Australia in the fastest and reliable way. So come, let's start by not delaying. 25 big updates of the Australia, especially for you. Before proceeding in the video, comment by commenting from which state you are watching, and also like video, so that YouTube can reach this video to more people of Australia. The Bureau of Meteorology has issued widespread flooding warnings across normally arid Central Australia, as a massive low-pressure trough delivers potentially 4 years' worth of rainfall in a single week. Areas like Alice Springs are on high alert, with flash flooding threatening remote communities, road closures, and inundation of cattle stations already reported from recent heavy downpours. The unusual weather stems from tropical moisture pushed south, potentially filling Lake Eyre for the second time in recent history, and causing major disruptions to transport, including the Trans-Australian Rail line. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has written to UK PM Keir Starmer, confirming Australia's support for any proposal to remove former Prince Andrew, now Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, from the line of succession. This follows Andrew's arrest on suspicion of misconduct in public office linked to Jeffrey Epstein dealings. Australia becomes the first Commonwealth realm to publicly back the move, which would require coordinated legislation across 14 countries, where King Charles III is head of state. Albanese cited recent events as justification, marking a significant symbolic step in distancing the Australian crown from controversy. The Royal Commission on Anti-Semitism and Social Cohesion held its inaugural public hearing in Sydney today, led by Commissioner Virginia Bell. The inquiry, established after the December 14th Hanukkah terror attack at Bondi Beach that killed 15 and injured 40, will examine rising anti-Semitism, but has narrowed its scope to avoid prejudicing ongoing criminal trials related to the attack itself. Opening statements outlined the process, with an interim report due by April 30th and final findings by December. NSW police discovered what are believed to be human remains near a golf club in Pitt Town this morning during the ongoing search for Chris Bagsarian, the 85-year-old grandfather abducted from his North Ryde home on February 13th, in what investigators describe as a tragic case of mistaken identity. Officers expressed outrage at the incident, saying no innocent person should endure such violence. Forensic tests are underway to confirm identity, while detectives from the Robbery and Serious Crime Squad continue inquiries into the kidnapping ring responsible. The International Space Centre at the University of Western Australia is spearheading a major campaign for federal government support of a human spaceflight mission, potentially in partnership with the European Space Agency, ESA. Backed by nearly 80 letters from industry and academia, the proposal aims to secure Australia's role in the booming $900 billion space sector through technology transfer, STEM inspiration, and economic benefits beyond a single astronaut flight. Director Professor Daniel Obreshkow described it as a, quote, once-in-a-generation opportunity for win-win collaboration. On the 4th anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Australia announced targeted sanctions on 180 individuals, entities, and Shadow Fleet vessels linked to Moscow, its biggest single package since February 2022. The government also pledged $40 million, including $10 million in January, to Ukraine's Energy Support Fund to maintain power and heating amid winter attacks. Total Australian aid now exceeds $1.7 billion, with $1.5 billion in military support, reaffirming commitment as the war enters its 5th year. The Australian Army has inked a $4 billion agreement with Austal Defence Australia for 8 new Landing Craft Heavy (LCH) vessels to strengthen littoral defence capabilities under the Strategic Shipbuilding Plan. Construction begins later this year at Henderson, WA, with delivery expected by 2038. The deal supports accelerated training for maritime officers and technicians to ensure skilled, safe crews for operations in contested coastal environments. Creative Australia revealed winners of the 2026 Asia-Pacific Arts Awards in Perth, honoring individuals and organizations for outstanding long-term contributions to cultural exchange, artistic collaboration, and partnerships across the Asia-Pacific region. The awards celebrate sustained impact in fostering cross-cultural dialogue through the arts. Western Australia's opposition has renewed calls for tougher enforcement and legislative changes to dismantle the state's growing illicit tobacco trade, citing public health risks, lost revenue, and links to organized crime. The debate continues amid concerns over enforcement effectiveness and rising smoking-related harms. HMAS Toowoomba crew members emphasized that stokers remain the backbone of today's Navy, responsible for maintaining critical systems like propulsion, power generation, and reverse osmosis equipment during deployments. Their work upholds long-standing maritime engineering traditions vital to operational readiness. Reports indicate most of the remaining cohort of Australian women and children linked to Islamic State from Al-Roj camp in Syria could be housed in Victoria upon potential return. Premier Jacinta Allen has refused to disclose specifics, drawing criticism for secrecy, while the federal government faces ongoing questions about assistance provided. Australia and Britain are deepening defense cooperation through a $310 million commitment to a UK-US Pillar 1 submarine development, alongside joint radar, drone, and missile testing initiatives that could indirectly support Ukraine's defense efforts. Former Treasurer Peter Costello highlighted Australia's rising net debt, equating to roughly $20,000 per person, driven by public sector expansion outpacing private sector growth. He urged urgent fiscal reforms to avert long-term economic strain. A new Australian Strategic Policy Institute report recommends strengthening alliances, including with Canada and the US, on critical minerals to reduce reliance on China and secure supply chains for clean energy and defense technology. Webjet's latest trends report places New South Wales as Australia's second most appealing state for 2026 tourism, trailing only the top-ranked destination, thanks to diverse attractions and recovery in visitor numbers. The Firefighters Union in Western Australia has applied to the IRC for a new enterprise agreement after stalled talks, with members citing better paid opportunities elsewhere and demanding improved conditions amid rising workloads. In a podcast, Prime Minister Albanese described One Nation as failing to represent working Australians and commented on Independent Senator David Pocock's parliamentary style during ongoing political discourse. With new U.S. tariffs of 10 to 15% looming, the Australian government is accelerating negotiations for a free trade agreement with the European Union to safeguard exports and diversify markets away from potential trade disruption. The Royal Australian Navy is prioritizing specialized training programs for officers and technicians to operate incoming landing craft safely, ensuring combat readiness in nearshore environments. Reports of increased foreign illegal fishing incursions have prompted upgrades at HMAS Cairns and renewed border protection discussions, highlighting strategic vulnerabilities in maritime sovereignty. New research featured in national media underscores connections between heavy social media use and elevated suicide risks among young people, fueling calls for stronger online safety regulations. Australia reiterated its support on the invasion's 4th anniversary, noting ongoing military and humanitarian aid contributions exceeding $1.7 billion to help Ukraine withstand the conflict. Members of the Iranian diaspora in Australia have described facing threats and harassment from pro-regime elements for their activism tied to protests in Iran. Leading newspapers published editorial cartoons satirizing key stories, including royal succession debates, flooding chaos, and foreign policy moves. Amid Trump's tariff implementation, Australian officials are making diplomatic representations to protect trade interests while exploring retaliation options and market diversification strategies to mitigate export impacts.